This is a big issue all across the country, and you know, from 1969, we're going to show you some figures a little later, until now, the perspective on marijuana use in this country has changed. We have three people who are directly involved in the debate and the argument. With us is Reed Gusciora, a New Jersey Assemblyman, deputy leader of the New Jersey Assembly, and also a municipal prosecutor, is now leading the effort for decriminalization in the Garden State of New Jersey. Bill Colarulo is superintendent of the Radnor Township Police Department. Always great to have you with us. And finally, Tina Rowan. Tina is senior counsel of the Livengrin Foundation for Addiction Recovery in Bensalem. You know, when you look at Colorado and Washington State, and you realize it's going to be okay at a certain point for recreational use, doesn't that scare you a little bit? I mean, the fact that people could be driving, a teenager could get a hold of it, or is it just as bad as alcohol use in America?
Well, I think it's a mixed, certainly a mixed message to completely legalize marijuana, which I don't advocate. But nonetheless, we have a lot of young people, particularly college students, that jeopardize getting a record that would affect their career. So I don't know if we necessarily need to make criminals out of people who are using it recreationally, as long as they're not endangering themselves or anyone else. And certainly for medical purposes, it should be legalized.
Now, just this past week, I believe, on Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday, the first center actually opened after years of controversy in New Jersey for medical marijuana. You're okay with that, medical marijuana?
Yes, we have the strictest law in the nation. You have to have one of 6 ailments, whether it's cancer, AIDS, glaucoma, a neuroskeleton disorder, or a muscular disorder. So you have to have a specific medical ailment to qualify for medical marijuana.
But you're for decriminalization too.
I am.
Is that the same as freeing it up to everybody?
No, in New Jersey right now, if you get caught with one joint, you face up to 6 months in prison, $1,000 fine, and $700 in state-assessed penalties. I think that's a little onerous for the occasional recreational user. Notwithstanding, they shouldn't be driving, nor should it affect anyone else's well-being.
Now, Tina, you're watching this change. Everything changes in America. What we thought was forbidden completely 20, 30 years ago is now beginning to be accepted. Are you concerned about the movement toward either legalization, decriminalization? Does that concern you?
There is some concern there as far as it being available, more available to the general public, who maybe wouldn't usually use the substance with it being illegal. However, if we look at it in terms of addiction, it's not the substance. I mean, there's many substances that are legal that people abuse. You know, there's so many factors that play into it. Right now, about 9% of individuals who use marijuana have a diagnosis of abuse and or dependence. Does that mean that everybody that uses marijuana, you know, recreationally will become addicted? Absolutely not. Just like people who socially use alcohol don't become alcoholics.
But on the other hand, and I don't know much about the drug, I really don't, but in terms of using it, does use of it make you more dependent? Is it like alcohol, where the more you use, the more dependent you become?
Yes.
Okay.
Like with any other substance, yes. If people are going to abuse the substance, there's a potential for dependency, absolutely.
And at Livengrin, do you treat a lot of people with marijuana dependency?
We treat a lot of people who have co-occurring marijuana and other substances. However, we do have some who come in marijuana or cannabis dependent, is the term that we use, who are just using cannabis.
But you're not that concerned, are you? I don't think, I mean, from what you're telling me. Are you conflicted about this?
I'm conflicted on, especially with the medical use. You know, but I have to look at it. I'm kind of neutral in that. Look at alcoholism. I look at the same as, or prescribed medications, such as OxyContin. Is there a purpose for it? Yes. You know, do people become addicted? Yes. Are we going to try to stop doctors from prescribing it? No.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm kind of neutral, and you know, I'll leave that up to the politicians. And if it is legalized, and more people become addicted, then we'll be there to treat. You had mentioned earlier, which is one of my concerns, is that it may increase like DUIs, things like that, because there will be more, more people. But as with alcohol, it would have to be monitored in the same way.
It's interesting. The country spent about, according to my figures, unofficial, $38 billion to interdict illegal drugs into this country. DEA, and I'm talking about cocaine, not just marijuana, cocaine, crack cocaine, illegal drugs that are coming into this country. As a police officer in a pretty progressive department in Radnor, can you see a time when marijuana would be legal, and could you accept that?
I'm not neutral on this at all, Larry, and I want to be straight up front with you here. It should never be decriminalized. It should never be made legal. I understand the purposes for medical marijuana use. However, let's remember something. Marijuana does not cure a disease. I understand when people have a legitimate serious illness like multiple sclerosis or even Alzheimer's, things like that, it can relieve the pain, but it doesn't cure anything. And the one last topic too, it could be treated for muscular disorder. See, to me, that's like a catch-all where somebody can go to the doctor and say, well, my back hurts, doc. Could I get a prescription for medical marijuana? And that's where the abuse starts. Now, just to go back in a time machine, 1936, 76 years ago, there was a movie come out called Reefer Madness. Right. And it was sensationalized, and it had people smoking marijuana, and they would go crazy. They would jump out the window and commit suicide. Obviously, it doesn't do that. But there are clinically proven facts about marijuana that it causes memory loss, distorted perception. Would you want a doctor operating on you that has marijuana use because of recreational purposes that were legalized in some states, or a police officer because of a back injury or whatever under the influence of marijuana when they're carrying a gun or stopping you? Or do you want them to show up when you call them for help? There's a gray area here, but it has to be defined what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. It should never be legalized.
But nor would you want a doctor or an officer drinking alcohol to excess doing the same thing. So I think there's always going to be abuse, as Tina says, but there are recreational users, and then the question is, does the punishment fit the crime? Should taxpayers put somebody in prison for up to 6 months in New Jersey for possession of one joint?
Do you allow an employee to take a marijuana break because their back hurts when they're working with
I don't think
machinery?
I'm not advocating that at all. But the other thing is that it has been demonstrated to alleviate wasting syndrome for AIDS patients, nausea for cancer patients, relaxation of muscles for MS patients. So it has been demonstrated to have benefits. I don't think that we should be making criminals of those persons that go out and get marijuana to alleviate those symptoms.
I was perfectly in support for the medical usage for a serious diagnosis to relieve pain, because these poor people are suffering. I'm talking about people that don't have a legitimate injury. Their pain could easily be controlled by taking 2 aspirin.
And I don't disagree with you.
But instead they get a prescription for medical marijuana, and we know the abuse is going to occur.